Welcome to Conversations with Big Rich. This is an interview-style podcast. Those interviews are all involved in the off-road industry. Being involved, like all of my guests are, is a lifestyle, not just a job. I talk to competitive teams, racers, rock crawlers, business owners, employees, media, and private park owners, men and women who have found their way into this exciting and addictive lifestyle. We discuss their personal history, struggles, successes, and reboots. We dive into what drives them to stay active and off-road. We all hope to shed some light on how to find a path into this world we live and love and call off-road.
Whether you're crawling the Red Rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Have you seen 4Low magazine yet? 4Low magazine is a high-quality, well-written, four-wheel drive-focused magazine for the enthusiast market. If you still love the idea of a printed magazine, something to save and read at any time, 4Low is the magazine for you. 4Low cannot be found in stores, but you can have it delivered to your home or place of business. Visit 4lowmagazine.com to order your subscription today. On today's episode of Conversations with Big Rich, we have Rob Usnick. Rob, the ultimate Renaissance man. And how I mean this is, let me give you an example. Army Ranger, raced KOH, fishing charter captain, podcaster, and bridal fashion designer. That makes a man a Renaissance man because you're touching all the bases. So, Rob, thank you very much for coming on board and talking with us and letting everybody know more about Rob.
Yeah, my pleasure, Rich. It's good to talk to you. It's been a while. You know, we used to hang out a lot back in the old Dirt Riot days and the KOH days, and then I kind of moved way out here where not a whole lot of off-roading whatsoever, so I kind of lost touch as far as like seeing everybody all the time. But yeah, it's a pleasure to be on here, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I'm glad we were able to get the timing to work out and everything. We've got so much to talk about, like you said, the old days, racing and stuff. But before we get into those racing days and all that, let's find out what makes Rob Rob. So where were you born and raised?
So I was actually born in Kansas City, Kansas. At the time, my parents lived right across the river in Missouri. And so I was born in Kansas City, Kansas, and I went all the way through high school living in Missouri, mostly rural. And when I graduated in 1991 from high school, a month later, I went right to Wyoming Tech and, with their automotive program out in Laramie. Well, once I got out, the recession was in full swing and all that stuff. So I couldn't get a job anywhere. And, the first Gulf War was ending and everything was bad. So I ended up working for a moving company called Carlisle Van Lines.
Okay.
And I was down in Warrensburg, Missouri, because that's where my girlfriend at the time went to college. And we were moving these people on and off Whiteman Air Force Base. So I'm standing there and I'm looking at these kids who are my age, and they're living it up. And so with nothing else to do, that's when I joined the Air Force in like 92. Did 4 years of that as a weapons loader. I was actually a pararescue trainee, but I couldn't make the cut and ended up getting dropped. So I was a nuclear weapons and conventional weapons loader on B-1 bombers. And then when the base realignment and closure came through, they realigned everything, and I went to fighter jets out in Las Vegas. I was at Nellis Air Force Base the last 2 years there, and I got out. And I actually got out, believe it or not, to join the Army to fly Apaches.
Okay.
And that was all going good until I went to a Special Forces recruiting briefing and ended up throwing everything, putting all my cards in, all my chips in the middle. And I actually went to selection, got selected, and then went back to Fort Bragg for the Q course and spent 3.5 years to be a Green Beret. And then I stayed the rest of my time at Fort Bragg until I retired at 26 years.
Okay. Let's go back in time to those early years in Missouri. You said it's pretty rural. You were still in that Kansas City area, but on the Missouri side?
Yeah, we're in the Missouri side, but I was a little bitty baby then, and then my dad was a railroader, so he retired from the railroad as an engineer. So we were kind of always moving around, and most of my growing up years was in rural small towns. So I ended up graduating high school in a little town called Slater, Missouri, and population's 1,300. My graduating class, like 31 people. I'm talking small town.
Right.
So a lot of small town stuff.
And being in those small communities, your dad with the railroad, he was gone a lot, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I mean, exactly.
so you that I'm sure you still got to see him and everything. I mean, but it was it was almost like having a military dad, I would imagine.
Yeah, it was really, really close, and it's funny you say that because I was talking to my friend about it the other day. Is that, I was moving around like a military kid, although I wasn't, because nobody in my family came from the military. But, dad would be gone, a couple days at a time running the trains around. So, yeah, it was very similar.
And in a small school or towns like that, was there an opportunity for you to play sports, to stay involved, or what was your thing?
Yeah, but we all had so much going on, and it was small. So when we all played sports, like when I played football in high school, you're gonna play both sides of the ball, offensive, defense, and at least one special team. Because I think at my senior year, it was like 9 seniors, 10 juniors, no sophomores whatsoever, and like 15 freshmen. So we were, it was so small that you just, in order to make the teams work, and it was still, it was like the 12-man. It wasn't our 11-man. It wasn't the small, like I think even Texas 5 and 6-man team.
Yeah.
It's 7. Yeah, we didn't play that. We actually played, the full squad. So it was just, it was you were nonstop going. But then all we did in the summertime was all hay. I think the summer that right before I graduated high school, we put up 25,000 bales of hay. We were running. I was on this little team that we just traveled around, and I can't believe I was doing that at 15, 16 years old. But traveling around all these little towns, like gone for 4, 5, 6 weeks at a time on these hay hauling crews, just hitting the field, getting it out of the field, getting in the barn, and then just traveling around doing this.
So you were hucking bales.
Oh yeah, man. The whole front of your pant legs all worn out.
But it gave you were in great shape.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So then you spent your summers doing that, or falls, before jumping back into school. And you said you went to Wyotech. What made you want to go into automotive?
Well, in those small towns, none of us really had a whole lot of cash, so we're always working on something, dirt bikes or quads when they were coming out. We all had junk, and so we did a lot of working on cars. And one of my best friends in high school, his older brother actually went to Wyoming Tech, like 79 or 80, like they were first starting off. So that's what we're going to do too. And of course we had vocational school, so we did that. I went to 2 years of their vocational school in automotive, and then I was going to go to Wyoming Tech. That's just what we were going to do. What I didn't understand at the time was just the economy aspect of it, and there just was nobody wanted to hire a punk kid.
Right. So then you're out of high school, you're out of Wyotech, you're working for the moving company, and you see the guys in the military, and you decide to jump in.
Yeah, and it's funny because even to this day, you drive down the interstates, I-10, I-70, I-90, whatever, and I always see Carlisle van lines, and there's old Roy Carlisle's faces on there, and that guy was the biggest butthole in the world. But yeah, it was because of that moving company,
So when you joined up the military, was your family surprised?
Yeah, they really were, and not they totally understood, because there just was nothing going on. And as much as I love small towns, small towns are bad if they're your small town. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I could go right back to Slater, Missouri, 65349, and there's still the same dudes sitting on the front porch that were there when I left there in 1991. Either you joined the military, you went to college, or you stayed right where you're at, and you're a mom and dad's front porch still drinking natural light. It's just easy to get into a rut. Now, you can go to another small town and be fine, but your small town, it's really, really hard unless you got some, you're a farmer or you got a lot of, stuff going on to get in that rut. So we all knew we had to leave, because
Right.
the only way you're going to become a farmer is if you marry into it or you inherit it, because you just don't become a farmer one day, and buy millions of dollars of implements and land. So for most of us, we knew we had to get out of Dodge.
Right. Okay. And you joined now I forgot what order it was in. You went into the Air Force first, and a weapons loader. Now, why did you not make the cut? You said you didn't make the cut as medic.
No, as a pararescue, a PJ.
Okay.
And they selected like 3 of us. I think at the time that you could volunteer and like sign up and come in as into their special operations. But I just one day they said, hey, you got selected for this. So I was like, okay. So I go down there and, I lasted a couple of weeks. And then, well, my biggest problem, Rich, was at 19 years old when I went, I wanted to underage drink and chase girls around. So my headspace wasn't, my mind wasn't right to like handle that training, because the same dive school that we were going to, I went to at 29 when I was in Special Forces and passed right through it. And it definitely wasn't, I wasn't any better off physically than I was, but, it's all about the mind part of it. And I was in a much better place to endure it than I was then.
Well, and I can understand that, especially when you're young. I equate it to sports. There's, like myself, when I was in high school, sports it was something that my friends were doing, and school sports, and I was interested because that's what they did, but I didn't have the mindset, especially for like football. It wasn't, I don't think I had enough aggression to make to make the team. I mean, I made the team, but I didn't start, I didn't play much because I didn't have that aggression. I didn't feel like I needed to get out there and hit somebody hard enough for snot bubbles and tears.
Which there was no passion. You're just doing it because everybody else was doing it.
Right.
Totally.
Yet then, on the ski slopes or water skiing, that was a passion. And so, I skied violently, as a violent skier, very, very forceful, where I wasn't that way with football. But, when I got into college and I understood, rules of the jungle more, I wished I'd have been that way in high school.
Yeah.
Just because of the opportunity would have been, I would have been a better player, and it might have it wouldn't have opened up much doors because I didn't ever get big enough. Tall enough or heavy enough, at least to play that kind of sport. But yeah, I get it, and that happens when kids go into the military too, because they're the same. They're still kids.
Yeah, and I think, well, if I had to do over, of course, you don't know what you don't know, but I think I missed out on a lot of opportunities because I didn't know what I didn't know, and even today, a lot of people who don't come from a military background, and I actually was a recruiter for a little bit for Special Forces. Those when mom and dad sees these recruiters on a college campus, they're not there to jerk little Johnny and Jane out of college and put them on the front lines. They're there to keep them in school by joining the reserves or whatever. And if you don't understand that, it can be menacing. And I, with no military background in my family, hell, I didn't know what was going to happen. Am I going to join up in 1992 or whatever and be in a trench somewhere? Because that's all you really know because of TV.
Right.
And when I was a recruiter, I told people, I was like, it's not what you think it is. And, even as an SF guy, where our job is to go, do combat, it's hard to get into a firefight, and that's our only job. And it's not like, our grandparents who went over there and fought, well, like Vietnam and stuff, and before that, where, you're fighting nonstop until you come home, if you come home,
Right.
There's no internet and all that stuff. And it's just not like that these days. So,
True.
and if you don't know, you don't know,
Right. I think the people nowadays that get the most action are those, at least it appears to be, would be the guys that are flying the drones from outside of Vegas,
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
and they're half a world away from, what they're doing. It's more like a game.
It is exactly. Yeah. That's technology, man. And can't beat that.
Right. So then you go Air Force, and then you decide to you jump into the army as an Army and get into the Ranger program. How did that transition from Air Force to Army?
I went in. I just did my regular 4 years and got out, and then I immediately went to the recruiter because, by that time I'd learned a little bit about the military and like opportunities, because the Air Force, as much as I loved it, you're not going to change your job. I remember back in the 80s and 90s, the Army was like, be all you can be.
Right.
It really is be all you can be, because you can come in as a cook, you can go be a Ranger, you can volunteer with Special Forces, pass all that stuff, go do that for a little while. You can put in a warrant officer packet and go fly helicopters, and then you can put in your master's program to be a physician's assistant and do that. There's always opportunity, whereas, the Air Force, it was nothing. Whatever you come in as, you're pretty much going to die, retire, or get out as that same job. But so that by the time I've been in for a little bit and start talking to people, that's what I knew, like, okay, I need to get out, join the Army, and go fly helicopters, because the only way you're going to fly anything in the Air Force is you have to have a 4-year degree. And, I still don't have a 4-year degree to this day.
Right.
So, the Army, you can be a warrant officer, not necessarily, you don't need a 4-year degree, to be a warrant officer.
Okay.
So that's what I was going to do. And then I went to a Special Forces recruiting briefing, and that's all it took.
So let me ask this, because I have no idea. My dad was in the military. I didn't do military. I was in that after Vietnam, before anything else really got started.
Yeah.
And it didn't make sense to go, for me at that time, at that age, even up to when I was 24, 25, it just didn't make sense. Even though I went and talked to the recruiters one time, it didn't make sense for me to do that. I don't think the recruiter did a very good job of explaining what the benefits would have been. Otherwise, I probably would have done it, because now I look back on it and going, wow, I missed out on, the GI loan, and I already had my education, so I didn't have to worry about, having to get a degree, and paying for that again. So, but when you went from the Air Force into the Army, do you still have to go through like boot then?
So, man, I knew I was going to have to.
Okay.
Go back to basic training, because the Air Force does what's called basic military training, and then the Army, we do basic combat training. So if you do the Marine Corps first, then you don't have to do any other one. And if you do if you want to go to the Army from the Navy or the Air Force, then you have to go back to basic training. So when I signed up, I actually took a train to. This is crazy. They put me on a train from Warrensburg to Kansas City, or maybe Sedalia to Kansas City. Then they flew me to Chicago or to St. Louis. Then I hopped on a bus to go to Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri. So it was like plane, trains, and automobiles to go like literally 100 miles down the road. so when you get there, you go to what's called reception, and that's when you kind of like in process and you get your issue and all your shots and all that stuff. So we're sitting in this room, and this drill sergeant walks in and says, "Hey, if you've spent one day in any other branch of the service, get in line right here." So I'm in the line, and people are kind of going to the left, going to the right, going to the left, going to the right. And I was like, maybe, because maybe they changed the policy. And when I told her, I did 4 years in the Air Force, and she's like, "Get over there." So I was going to the welcome to basic training pile. And I was just like, oh my God, I was 24 years old, and I'm just like, here we go again. But it wasn't that bad.
So you mean it wasn't that bad? In which way?
So in the Air Force, everything's we did wall locker inspections 3:00 in the morning. You did 4 or 5 a day. I think in the Army we did wall locker inspections twice. Now, both times everything got dumped over and it was a mess, but it wasn't the mental part of always worrying, like where every little, the attention to detail in the Air Force was so far different from the Army. You know, the Army was just like not quitting and being cold and being hungry, versus the Air Force is like, okay, you're not really gonna be cold or hungry, but you will make sure everything is exactly how it's supposed to be, and don't ever leave anything out of place, because they'll walk up to you at 4 o'clock in the morning, wake up, airman, and open your wall locker, and everything has to be perfect, you know. And the Army is just like, get up and go run. You know,
Yeah.
That makes sense. It was more physical, not mental. And honestly, the Air Force's basic training was probably harder because of that fact, because you're always wondering, like, you know, am I gonna get in trouble for not, you know, having beer, like little whiskers in my white towel and my, you know, display. You know, in the Army, nobody cared about that.
Okay. So the physical part of it, though, did you thrive on that?
Yeah, I actually did pretty good. I went through at 24 through basic training, and you know, most of the people with me were, you know, 18, 19 out of high school, but because, you know, old man strength, man, you know how it is.
Oh yeah.
I was getting it, and these kids, you know, they all looked better with their shirts off, but you know, I was still like in the fast ability group running, and you know, still maxing the PT test, where they were struggling on that.
Right. No, I know that at 24, 25, I was much stronger, even at 30, than I was at 18 or 19.
Yeah.
Even though I was lifting weights and everything in high school, it wasn't the same kind of strength.
Yeah, and you understand your body more, and you start understanding like limits, and you know.
Right. So then let's talk more about that Army Ranger stuff. If I remember right, you competed in the like Special Forces Olympics or whatever they call it.
Well, yeah, I did Best Ranger. So basically, the way special, and I'm gonna talk. I have a point here, but I gotta kind of preface it with this.
No worries.
So in Special Forces, right? You know, they call us 3-time volunteers. You volunteered for the Army, you volunteered for airborne school, because you have to jump out of airplanes, and then of course you volunteered for Special Forces training. So once you get, you know, the people who fall out of the bottom of that, all that process, everybody has like the same core values and standards. So everybody's a badass, and it sucks because when you're with people who are badasses, you don't realize that you are one, because you're surrounded with excellence everywhere you look, you know. And so we have dive teams, you know, we have a ruck team, we have a mountain team, we have a halo team. Each Special Forces company has a specialty, and I went to dive school, and so I was on a dive team, which is like, you know, they're the commander's go-to team, because we're idiots when we don't quit, and we don't mind being miserable, and we'll, you know. But when I get my dive team, everybody was a ranger except for me, and you know, in the Army, when it comes to Ranger school, you know, the thing is like, either you got a story or a tab, meaning you got a story on either why you didn't go or why you didn't pass, or you actually have the Ranger tab. And there's two different Rangers. You know, there's a Ranger, a graduate of the school, then there's actually, you know, a member of Ranger Battalion. So I always wanted to go, but when I was in Special Forces, especially the early years, 2003, 2004, 5, 6, 7, we were deploying so much that, you know, you're gone 8 months, home for 6. I got 2 little kids. I can't burn up 6 or, you know, 3 months of that 4 or 5 months that I'm off running around in the woods trying to get a Ranger tab. So I didn't go to Ranger school until I was 39.
Wow.
Yeah. So, you know, then I went to Best Ranger, the 30th annual Best Ranger, which is the dumbest thing I think I ever did. Yeah, that's where they're trying to kill us. So that's how I got into that part.
And let's talk about that competition, that Best Ranger.
So at that point, I was trying to retire to go out west, because I wanted to. The only reason I ever got into off-road racing is because I wanted to prep race cars. I went to TJ Flores' shop. He invited us over one day, and I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And, you know, each car has this bay and it's torn down and all this stuff. But the only way that you can prep a desert car or any kind of race car is you better know what it takes to, you need to know what they go through. So that's the only reason I was ever doing it, because that's what I wanted to do. And so anyways, I wanted to retire out west. So I took that recruiting job, and I was a special forces recruiter at Fort Bliss and in El Paso. And that's when you and I really started running around before, you know, because that's when you were doing the dirt riot stuff.
Right.
And on the way to, when I was moving out there, because my wife, Kristen, at the time, my ex-wife, she was in Iraq, and it was me and the kids. So I had to make one trip from Fayetteville, North Carolina to El Paso. I dropped the kids off with grandma and grandpa, flew back, grabbed my 45-foot triple axle gooseneck and my F-250 with all the race cars in it, drove back across, picked the kids up, and made it to El Paso. Well, when I was on the way out, I got promoted to E8. And my E7, the job I was thinking was for, you know, an E7. So they told me I can't stay in that job. Well, I ended up being able to stay in it, but I was eligible to re-enlist. So they're offering us a pretty substantial bonus because we're losing so many senior guys in special forces to stay to 25, you know. So I moved all the way out there, ended up doing my 3 years as a recruiter, and then moved back to Fort Bragg and finished up my last 6 years there. But that's what I was moving out west to do that, you know.
Okay.
That's the only reason I took that job, to try to get as far out west as I could.
And El Paso was it, which is...
Yeah, that was the farthest, you know, because we were driving back and forth from the East Coast, Vegas to Reno, King of the Hammers. It's a long drive. And, you know, half your guests on there that you've had from the Midwest and East Coast. It's a long drive to Southern California.
Right. What did you think of El Paso? Because I know what I think, but I only drive through it.
So I moved there in 2010 or 11, and right across the border in Juarez was like the most dangerous city in the world, and El Paso was like the safest city per capita, you know, in the world. I loved it. You know, me and Kyle could rip the dirt bikes out at 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning, rip the Las Cruces right out of the driveway, you know, have breakfast burritos. I'd have a couple beers, and we'd rip back, and we're done by noon, you know, before it gets to 10,000 degrees. I loved El Paso. It was just, you know, I really did like it.
I don't like driving through it because the traffic just sucks.
Yeah, it gets a little.
And there's no way, you know, it doesn't have a loop around it.
No.
The highways are getting better. You just don't hit it at the right. If you hit it at the right time, it's perfect.
Yeah, and the base is beautiful. Fort Bliss is amazing.
Huh. Okay.
Believe it or not.
That's awesome to hear. So then I understand that you did pretty good at that. From what I recall, that you did really well at that Best Ranger competition. Yeah.
So when you're a recruiter on these bases, right? Remember, I'm going to these units, and I'm asking these units. I don't need all your best people, but I do need a few of them. And in order to, you got to build rapport with the sergeant majors, especially, and nobody can stop these kids from doing it, but they can make these kids' life hell, you know? So you got to kind of like make it smooth and glossy. So Fort Bliss put together a Best Ranger competition, you know, to select, you know, the 2 best Rangers to go represent Fort Bliss in 1st Armor Division. And I just graduated Ranger School, and I was like, well, you know what? I'm a part of this base. I need to make my face known. So I just was going to go over there and help them set up and organize it, and, you know, and help out as I could, because I was Ranger qualified. And I went over there. The first day they had 9 people. The second meeting there was down to 7. And then they got down to like 5 people. And I'm like, you know what? I'm entering this thing just to make the numbers look good.
Right.
Well, I messed around and got 2nd place. and I was going to go and represent 1st Armor Division, although I was a member of the Special Operations Recruiting Battalion. I was going to go and represent Fort Bliss. I thought it was a great idea, and it made me a part of the base, right? And when you're trying to deal with people, when you represent the base, they're more likely to let you talk to formations and stuff. Well, my battalion commander at Fort Bragg got the news, and he put he put a stop to that, and then we ended up going on he put together his own team, which is me and another guy, to represent the SORB, the Special Operations Recruiting Battalion. So, so the guy I went with, Marcus Daniels, You know, he flew from, I think he was a recruiter in New York, like Fort Drum or somewhere. He flew out to El Paso because of the elevation, and we trained there for like 4 or 5 weeks before he went. But so we get there, and I'm telling you, it's actually pretty funny because in the military, you know, like, and when you're in airborne school, they call you airborne. When, you know, like, what are you doing airborne? Like, it's derogatory,
Right.
you know? And then you go to Ranger school, you know, like, what are you doing, Ranger? Like, everything's so, it's so negative. Well, 6 months later, I'm back at Fort Benning again, and the same RIs, the Ranger instructors, are calling us Ranger, but it's, all of a sudden you stand up a little straighter. You know, the same person saying the same word, but it means something totally different now.
Right.
You know, so it was just funny we were celebrities. I think Colin Powell was the grand marshal of the event, and you know, he was there. Like, it was big. You know, we got all this free stuff that we, you know, like, we were treated like royalty there at the best Ranger competition. But man, those guys, I'm telling you, man, they were trying to kill us. I've never carry what? How? What? You know, like, it was the most ridiculous stuff you could think of, and then triple it, and now double the length of whatever. And it was nonstop. It went on for 3 days straight.
And how did you do there?
So we were running. We were in the top half, but then my Ranger buddy, he couldn't make the road march, and the road march, which is the cutoff, once time expires, they drop you. Then everybody else moves on. So yeah, he's on the side of the road. He's like, man, I just can't move my feet anymore. You know, and I was kind of frustrated a little bit because the dude that got first at Fort Bliss and I got second, me and him, his buddy quit on him. And I was like, you know, I told Josh, I was like, man, he's a lieutenant. I was like, man, sir, we should have been together. But so I ended up getting second place at Fort Bliss in their best Ranger. And then I think we ended up getting, I don't know, 27th place overall, or whatever it was, which it was essentially was a DNF, but
right.
It was just cool to be a part of it, you know?
And then you were probably the oldest guy there?
Actually not. And this is
okay.
the surprising part. And it's funny you mention that. A lot of the people who do best are these old Delta Force guys that are probably, I don't know, high 40s, low 50s, that are sergeant majors out there. They'll go through with a major or a lieutenant colonel who's, you know, 45 years old. Those guys kill it. You know, it's either those guys or the guys who come from Ranger Regiment, because when Ranger Regiment, and even the 82nd Airborne Division for that matter, if you get selected for Best Ranger, your job for a year before you go is to train. You know, the rest of us got jobs, you know, like, I don't have you're going to give me a year to go run around. So those guys you get, but you know, of course, Delta Force, those guys are physical specimens of their own right. But yeah, I was surprised at how many old dudes, of course, they're all Delta guys, but how many old dudes that were there. Now at Ranger School, I was the second oldest. There was one dude there older than me.
And did he pass?
Yeah, actually he recycled into my class, and he was this group sergeant major for the PSYOPs group. Like, this is a command sergeant major, which is, you know, you can't get any higher ranked than a command sergeant major. And it's like, man, his name was Courtney Mavis. And so AFN, the Armed Forces Network, was there, and they kept doing interviews on me and Mavis. And so we'd be in the patrol base, and the RIs would be like, okay, Rangers, listen up, paparazzi's here. And they hate it. Our eyes hate it because it was a training distractor. Because all of a sudden it's lights, camera, action, and they're over there interviewing me and Mavis the whole time. It was the most surreal experience of my life. Just the whole everything. So all those videos are on YouTube and stuff, and it's ridiculous.
That's awesome. So,
yeah, just like, what's going on here?
So then you're racing during your military time, correct?
Yeah. So other than deployments, we do whatever we want, you know, and especially in Special Forces, it's our 12-man team. We got a training calendar, and you do what you want. As long as you're not going to miss a deployment or a training event, you know, you're good to go. So I would look at the schedules, and then we just start planning. And, you know, the biggest thing, and listen, I'm definitely not the anomaly. 3/4 of the dudes who do all this stupid stuff, we rely on friends. And, you know, I leaned on friends a lot, just like everybody else does, to get us out there and back, even no matter how crappy of, the showing is, because it just takes so much resources, and to come from that far away from the East Coast, and then to juggle the military part, that wasn't bad. And that part was as bad as it was at Fort Bragg. It was a lot easier at Fort Bliss because we could zip over to Tucson for a weekend and do a dirt riot race,
Right.
Or we could go from El Paso, and one year we did the Parker 425, and then on a Saturday, and then ran down to KOH the next week, and when I was in recruiting, there was no problem taking 2 weeks off to do that.
Good.
No problem at all. And then of course we're racing. We're doing all these little practice races, these little local. They're actually pretty fun races. Right there in El Paso. I think Kyle's first desert race on his little KX100. He was 12 years old, did a 125-mile desert race on a KX100, and I think he got third place. And the funny thing is, and you're gonna get a kick out of this, the trophies was like these little printed out things, and it had a little white label on it, and it said third place Kyle. But the picture was like Pete Soren in like the old number 2 trophy truck, like like a Pistol Pete. It's like. I'm sure most of them knew who Pistol Pete was, but it's just funny. Like I don't know if they just grabbed some stock images of desert racing trucks off the internet. But I was like, dang, Kyle, you got a Pistol Pete trophy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but Kyle did 100. Then he got out. Then he got off the dirt bike, and then hopped in the Rhino with me and was co-driving. Of course, he already knew the track. 12 years old, like a bobblehead in that stupid thing. But yeah. But it was nice to do all those little practice, those shakedown races.
Right.
It's nice to go do 100 because like test running and stuff, we can do test running, but you can't test run the way you do in a race. I'm not going to go out there and test run 100 miles, but we're racing and it's $30 to enter, let's go run it hard. Let's shake the stuff out. And it was nice to have that ability right there, in your backyard.
Right. That does help.
Because they sure didn't have that in Fayetteville, North Carolina, my friend.
So then you're racing, you're still in the military, and how long did you continue racing for?
So, when I built my little Suzuki buggy back in 08, 07, 08, the very first race we did was at Uwharrie 4x4 cross. And then, I remember back, that was in Greg Stone. That was the second year. He ran this buggy off into the lake. Well, they had moved it the year before that. They actually ran it through the national forest, and it was actually a pretty big deal to get the permits and stuff. And I finished that buggy, and the night before, and raced it the next day. Ended up hitting a tree and breaking it. But that was the first time that little buggy raced. And I swear I was going to Little Creek, Virginia. And I forgot what magazine it was back then, Crawl magazine probably. And they had Shannon Campbell and, the KOH thing. And I was just like blown away because for us on the East Coast, it really wasn't that, 2008, it hadn't really gotten to us as much as everybody on the West Coast knew about it, right? Because it was kind of like, we watched it on Pirate and stuff, so we knew a little bit. But when Dave Cole said, we're going to take applicants. And that's when I actually had my laser guy cut out it was on that Crawl magazine, like the page of it. It had this big King of the Hammers, like all these skulls and this emblem with the crown. And I had my laser cutter print that out and then metal. And I put my application form in there, like a picture book and all these pictures of like all this junk we were building and racing and stuff, and put it in the FedEx box and shipped it off. And then of course, Dave calls but I was talking to Jody. I think you might have been down in Baja then, talking to Jody Everdeen. I was with Bob Rogie,
right?
And for the 1000, and Jody said, he's like, brother, I was there when that box came in because they were doing the interviews for the KOH movie,
right?
And he's like, Jeff Nolan, they pulled that out and said, I don't care who he is, he's in. They saw that big aluminum cut out of the design. So, and then that's how I felt. So we go out there and no idea what we're getting into. I'd never seen rocks that big, and the desert. I think I had Rancho coilovers on that thing or some craziness. Again, like we said earlier, you don't know what you don't know, and that stuff was just so out of my like scope of knowledge. Despite Pirate, and speaking of Pirate, I think my member number was like 3,000. Like old school dude.
Right.
Not old as like Lance and Camo and probably you, but definitely, remember 3000, because meaning I knew a lot about what was going on, but I never had put my hand on a real coilover before, It was just crazy. You get out there, it's like, oh, gee, I think we made it 11 miles. We broke the wishbone. I had the ready welder, so we got it welded, and then those big rocks, man, and it was just, I think I had 42-inch stickies on this time, and my little Toyota axles just weren't having it.
So did you race that buggy again at any point at KOH, or did you jump into the UTVs?
So no, I raced it 09, 10, and 11. So we raced it 09, got our butts handed to us, and then I was like, all right, we know something now. So we went back, and then that's when we did the very first race. I think was in May. It was up in Pennsylvania at Rouse Creek, and that's when I had to kick Billy out of the car because he was too fat, and we'd already lost one coilover, broke off. I think I was on FOAs then, which maybe part of the problem. Of course, it was just rough, and that's when I rolled at the finish line, and I think Will Carter got first, but he's already qualified, and I was 11th. I was 11th person, and although I was over time, they came to get 10 people, and I was the 10th person to actually finish, and that's the whole Usnick finish, from Will Gentile and those guys in the video. That's what got us into 2009, or 2010, and then we did a little bit better that year, but not a whole lot. And then we did what do they call that? The international. They had 3 series going on in like 2010, and then that's how we qualified to go back in 11, and then 12, 13, and 14 I raced the UTVs.
Right.
And then I went back in the dirt bike, did King of the Motos in 2015, which is up there in the top 5 dumbest things I've ever done.
Those were pretty wild, watching those starts and watching the guys just trying to drag their bikes up the hills and everything. And
I went there with this kid who we do hair scrambles with in North Carolina, and my buddy Cassidy. And this kid can ride a dirt bike like nobody else. And I was we left out there Chocolate Thunder at night. All right, no problem. We made it. I think it took me 4 hours. I think the winner's like 24 minutes or something. So then the next morning we lined up again and went up that big, huge wall. Okay, that stuff was stupid. Well, my visor had broken off. So I'm lining up on stage 3. And this is where we're going to cross all back behind school bus, like all up in that stuff. And I was like, is it illegal for me to race without a visor on my helmet? Like, I was looking for any way for somebody to be like, hey, you can't run like that. All right, okay, I'm out, man. My visor's broke. And they're like, no, you're good, dude. So I'm like, oh. So we're running up here, and I come across Cassidy, and this dude can ride a dirt bike, Rich. I mean, he is a master, and he has his arms, his forearms on the handlebars. He's leaning over. He says, Rob, I got to turn back. And I'm like, why, buddy? He's like, I don't want to die today, man. I can't get any more. I was like, well, I ain't going back because I don't know what's in front of us, but I know what's behind us sucks. So he turned back, and I just kept going. And finally, I timed out on the backside. But yeah, that was stupid. I was so glad. And man, what was his name that formulated that? Who came up with all those courses?
Jimmy Lewis.
Yeah. He's the one who pulled up and said, "Hey, man, time's over. Drop down to the road and head back to camp." Yes, sir.
Yeah, I work with Jimmy every year now on the Rebel Rally. The guy's phenomenal.
I was scared. I was scared. Scared. And then of course the good thing is you have arm pumps so bad you can't even hold on anymore. So it's just like you're throwing the bike around and I just ghost riding it up, and God bless those KTMs.
That's awesome. So then KOH, you get when did the bug hit you to fish? So
coming from Missouri, we all fish. You ask all those guys in the Midwest and the East Coast. I mean, it's all freshwater fishing. Most of us have farm ponds, and so I've always fished. And because our dive school is in Key West, from 2003 on, that's when I went to dive school, we were always down there. And we're training, but then we had these 26 of 30-foot center console boats that we use for dive, operations. Somebody always bring tackle and we go fish. Like, okay, you're out there, you catch a fish that would be something to be proud of out of a pond. It's 4 pounds, whatever. And, that's a bait fish here. And it blew my mind just how big it was. And So I just started doing it with these guys all the time. And I did a fishing tournament in North Carolina. We came down to Ocean Isle to dive and did a fishing tournament. And the dude I was with, him and his buddy came. It was me and my son Kyle, and him and his buddy came down. And at 4:30 in the morning, me and Kyle we had gotten up and we're icing the boat. They're coming in from the club, and I'm like, well, dang, I would have went to the club. I thought this was serious. We paid big money to get in this thing. So get them in the truck, go down, put the boat in the water, and we take off. And these two dudes pass out and puke all day long, and left me and my son Kyle out there trolling with all these lines. And we didn't catch a single fish. We trolled all the way up to the cutoff boat. When you come back into the intercoastal, cutoff time was at 5 o'clock, and right at like 4:55 we got to the cutoff boat. We had to reel everything in and woke those dudes up. We pulled in there and pulled the boat out of the water. And when those guys got out of the truck at the hotel, I told Kyle, I was like, I will never ever go through that again. We're gonna figure this out. And next thing you know, we just figured it out, But that's what got it going. And then I bought my big boat, Why Not, which took you and Shelly out. And then I think, who was with us that day? Who was that? Nick?
Nick, yep.
Yeah.
Nick and his wife.
Yeah. And then which I still have. We brought Why Not down here, but it's been full throttle since then. And I'm telling you, man, I had to quit fishing down here because I did 1,056 charters in 2.5 years. And, it's water's 3 to 5. And at, almost 50, I just can't do 15-hour days and get my teeth kicked in on those boats anymore. I can't deliver the product,
Right.
So now I'm a backup guy for them if they need help. And then I run these party boats, which is easy, breezy, beautiful. 100 drunks get on here, drive them around, and come right back in. It's easy. And the boat's big, it's like 63 feet, But now I fish on my boat for fun, versus doing the charter fishing where it's just, everything's just so much work, and the money is amazing. It's ridiculous, but it's a lot of work,
Right.
And we don't have mates. So you do everything, you rig the tackle, drive the boat, set the lines out. You're by yourself. So it's just, you're running every day. You're just nonstop on your feet.
And doing that many charters in that short a time. That's crazy.
Yeah. Every day down here, we'll do a 6-hour and a 4-hour. Then we have a 1-hour turn, meaning you got to come back from the 7 to 1 o'clock, get back at 1 o'clock, or, 1:15 or whatever it is, clean the fish, clean the boat. Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, you got to run over to the fuel dock, get gas. And then if you got a St. John pickup, you got a 15-minute boat ride over there to pick up those guests, do a 4-hour trip, get back, clean the fish, and you got to come back. I mean, you're running it's the most ridiculous. I've never seen boats run this much. And it's 365 days a year.
Right.
It is insane. It is insane. Because when I was in Panama City Beach, I think I added it up. It was 14 weeks of charter fishing, where you have tourists, because the snowbirds come down from November to March, and they're not booking charters. They're stealing salt and pepper shakers from the Waffle House, so they don't have to buy it for their rental, because they're on fixed income. And then the spring breakers come, and they're 15 to a room drinking natural light. They're not booking charters, So you have a couple weeks in April, and then Memorial Day to the first week in August, and then a couple weeks in October, and it adds about 14 weeks minus mechanical, minus weather, and it's not very many days to make your whole nut for the whole year.
Right.
And then all my buddies who are up there doing it, they'll go work someplace else in the winter, Home Depot, or do clean gutters or construction or whatever. And I just wanted to run boats, and down here we run the boats.
And so you moved down there. You were in the Virgin Islands. You were on the American Virgin Islands or British?
Yeah, no, we're from the USVI. I'm on St. Thomas.
Okay. And
I call it Santo Tomas because everybody wasn't so funny, but yeah, St. Thomas.
So then you've had a lot. Some of your friends come down, guys that you raced with, come down and charter, or did you come across?
It's pretty funny. Yeah, it's pretty funny how many people have actually been down here. Oh, Camo stayed on the boat. I think Camo, him and Heather were on the boat. They lived on Why Not for like maybe a month last December. They came down, it was a couple weeks or a month. It was a long time. And, Brian Shirley and those guys all came down. Like, it was just funny how many people were coming down here.
Right.
Not necessarily for me, but they were coming down here, and luckily we got to hang out.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny, actually. It's how many people I've seen down. Of course, the two people that I always see anywhere, Camo and JT Taylor. I see those two dudes. I'll be in some random country somewhere, and all of a sudden JT standing there buying whatever. Or deep in Mexico at some little town, Camo walks up, "Hey, Rob." So it's always fun. No matter what, I always see JT, and I've seen JT Taylor twice here. You know,
Nice.
And then Camo came out. So it's funny how many people do have come out here.
I know that Shelly and I have been wanting to come out, and things have just not worked out yet, but we're going to get down there. Hopefully you'll still be there.
Well, it's tough for you guys on the West Coast. But what's crazy is when COVID, I was here right before COVID, and then we shut down from like March 27th to the 1st of June in 2020. And when we opened back up, we were gangbusters. Normally the summertime's our slow season. And we opened up in June, broke all-time records. July, broke all-time records. We broke all-time records for the first 7 months we were back open, because BVI, which is 4 miles away, they fall under European protocols, so nobody was in and out of there. For you guys on the West Coast, Hawaii wasn't necessarily closed, but it was like, come on out, stay 14 days in your room, and then after that you can stay on the property. And nobody was really going to burn up their vacation for that. And then Mexico had all the weird rules if somebody's going there. So we had so many people come from Arizona, California, Oregon, Washington State, Idaho, who that part of the country does not come to St. Thomas, but we're the only show in town. And the beauty of it is there's no passport needed. And people were telling me, Rich, and I kid you not, people were telling me that their companies that they work for said, "Hey, if you guys go on vacation, don't leave the United States." All right, well, guess what? This is the United States. Although it is America-ish, it's still the United States,
Right.
So we got so many people from, I call it west of the Dallas-Fort Worth imaginary line that cuts the United States in half.
Right.
West of there, you guys usually go to, Mexico or Hawaii. And then east of there, Florida, out to here, whatever. But so many people were coming from that part of the country. It was pretty crazy.
Sweet.
Well, it was the only show in town.
So what are you doing? What are you doing there now? If you're just part-timing, or is that enough? Is that enough to survive?
Yeah, I got my retirement stuff in the military, and that's good. And then running these boats a couple days a week is good. And then, the part everybody I'm sure is wondering, the whole bridal thing. I got my beautiful gowns right here.
Yes.
So I actually got a couple bids on that stuff going too. But that was more one of those things where I just like being able to do it for like when my daughter gets married, or when like my friend, what I'm saying? It's more something like that. Not something making them is one of the hardest things I've ever done. And, my joke is, because I'm always making fun of, Kyle. Kyle sent me all these pictures. He's fabricating, like doing man stuff and all this stuff. Went to the fab school. He's TIG welding, all this crazy stuff, working on Ferraris. And I'm like, well, I'm still fabricating too, buddy. I just use a sewing machine and I'm using cloth, or fabric. There's a reason why these gowns take so long to make. And I've worked for like 5 or 6 weeks on these last two to get them done. And I'm talking 20 hours a day, because there's a lot to them. And mine aren't even that elaborate, So what started that was, I've always liked the fashion industry, and when I was in Milan, I actually linked up with this fashion school there and enrolled. And I did 2 classes. I did women's lingerie and swimwear, which is kind of the same thing, because swimsuits is where the money's at, man. They're easy to make, and you can charge whatever you want. And then of course bridal. And then with bridal, it's not necessarily bridal gowns, it's all kinds of dresses too. But my goal was to get 2 gowns to New York for Bridal Fashion Week. And what I was trying to do was get into Martha Stewart's, after show, or her little after party, and where the gowns be on display, but that didn't work out. But yeah, so, and the funny thing about the whole fashion industry is, this is all new to me too, buddy. Like I was blown away. They're called fashion figures, our little drawings that we do.
Right.
And it's on a scale. Like it's from head to toe, it's a 10. Like the head is 1, and then it's scaled down, chest, bust, waist, hips, all the way down. And you draw them to that scale because of the mannequins that you use, they're to that model size. And the very first assignment I did, I was like, I'm not going to send these little skinny model chicks who, look around. That's not what a woman looks like. So I drew full figured women, and with my garment designs. And my professor lit me up. No, we don't do that. And I was like, well, why not? So then he explained it to me. He's like, here's why. If you draw the fashion figure scale, and you make this garment on this model that's based off that, you can make this garment, put it in a box, take it to London, and when the model walks in, it'll fit her or him. Does that make sense?
Right.
It's a standard use. Now you can get full figured models or real skinny models or whatever, but for what we do, it's to that standard, that industry standard, where that model, no matter where in the country, they can put it on.
Right.
So it all made sense then. Okay. But yeah, the bridal stuff really blows me away, man. And some of these gowns, $25,000, $30,000, depending on how much, of the handmade stuff goes into them. But yeah, it's been pretty exciting, and it's definitely something that I was just totally like, I've never seen this side of like what goes on, and then the funny thing is, and you're gonna kick out of this. So I go downtown, right? That's where the fabric store is. And, it's all West Indian, ladies in there. So I walk in and she's like, what are you doing in here, boy? I'm like, oh, I'm here to get some fabric and making dresses. He's like, oh, you need dress. She can make you a dress. And I'm like, I was like, Daddy can sew. So she kind of rolled her eyes. And then the next time I went in there, give me a hard time. So now I start bringing coffee and donuts. Then I started bringing some of my stuff in and showing them pictures or whatever. And once I started getting street cred, they started helping me because, it's kind of like welding. Oh, you can weld? And then all of a sudden you got stainless steel in front of you. Oh, all of a sudden you got aluminum in front of you. Like welding isn't just welding. Metal isn't just metal. And these fabrics are the same. And it got to the point now I go down there, it's like, man, this is a really nice fabric. She's like, they call me Rabba. Rabba, you don't want that. I was like, why not? She's like, because you're not good enough to sew it. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? She's like, brother, I've been sewing my whole life and I have a hard time with it. And I get it because some of this stuff doesn't go to the machine right. And you have to have years of experience or natural talent, which I don't have, to sew it, to make it look good. And they're teaching you all that stuff of it too. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But that's kind of been a hard row to hoe down there with those ladies because, man, they weren't having me down there. They did, what you doing in here, boy? They didn't take a liking to me at first.
So talk about Milan. How did you end up in Milan?
So I went there for my girlfriend at the time's birthday. We went all through Italy and stuff. And Milan, I don't know if you've ever been, but Milan is my favorite city in the world. It is so nice, and the people are nice, and there's so much stuff going on. It's an amazing place to be. And as far as fashion goes, that's where you want to be. At least in my opinion. There's no fashion stuff going on in, Slater, Missouri, where I grew up. So, that's where it all starts. And I fell in love with the city and, enrolled in the course and it started off there. And then the rest of it, I could come back and do it here and just do the assignments. But a lot of the basic stuff, they have to make sure that we can do, the sewing part of it, just all that's involved with it, pattern making, the drawing, whatever it is, designing it, and then making it from paper to an actual garment and how to fit. And there's all kinds of way you move the material over, make darts and whatever to like folds around, especially like a bust, on a woman, and how a woman's body is generally shaped, and then how to start offsetting for, women who have larger butts or women who are smaller chested. Like it's like all that stuff. They teach you like how to, when you design it, when it actually starts to making it, how to offset for that stuff.
Okay.
So,
And how old? Yeah, how old were you when you went to Milan?
I was this summer. It was me when this class I was in. It was me. It was all the dudes in there were gay, and then all the girls were like early 20s, and then there's me. You talking about being a minority, bro? I told him that the sun, it was 83 degrees outside, to be like, no, it's not. No matter what I said, I was wrong. what are you doing in here? Same thing. What are you doing in here, boy?
I didn't realize that this was something that was brand new. Okay.
Oh yeah, brand new. Yeah, that's why I posted that stuff, and my dad was getting emails like, I think Rob's Facebook's been hacked.
I was like, what is going on?
Well, the thing is so many people, and I was on a mission too, because one thing I hate, man, is when people say, "Oh, you can't do that." I can't stand that.
Right.
And by God, I was going to get 2 grounds in New York City no matter what, and I pulled it off. But I was mad, like Wyatt and Kelly Kaiser and Miles, Jab Nasty. We're on that group text that we've been on for like 14 years. They all believed in me. They're like, my friends did, but just random people like, dude, what? No, I was surprised at how many haters like there was.
Now I wasn't a hater. It came out of left field, for me.
Yeah, no, left field, that was normal. A lot of people that left field, but the people that knew I had this stuff going on, they were just like, dude, rolling their eyes. Girls were probably the worst about it. And here's another thing too. I can't believe I'm even saying this. I was downtown, a little bar called Bernie's here, and the guy's like, "What do you do?" Like, "Oh, I'm a seamstress." And this guy, he's like a boat mechanic. He's like, "But you're a dude. Wouldn't you be called a seamster?" And I was like, "Well, damn, that's a good question." So I Googled it, and it was like non-gender specific. It was like a person who sews. But I was like, "Damn, waiter, waitress, actor, actress." Seamstress, seamster, but I still like being called seamster or seamstress.
Right.
I don't know. It just blows people away.
So is it something you're going to continue to do?
Yeah, I'm going to do it, but not unless. And I've actually got. This is the crazy thing, because this industry is like so. I just don't know hardly anything about it. I've actually got hit up by one fashion designer in Puerto Rico. Big name. I'm not going to say the name, but she is a pretty big name in the fashion in Puerto Rico, has reached out and has inquired. And then I had another one from New York. I'm just kind of like, I'll get back with you. I need to take a step back from it, because it's just all come so fast that I don't know. Like, I just don't know. I love making them, and I love, man, when these girls put these gowns on. It's just funny how even like my 2 girls that are down here that were trying them on when I was fitting them, these girls are like 22 years old. When you put this, their face lights up when they put a wedding gown on, and then here's the thing with my gowns, I got pockets. I got 2 little pockets on the side, not big pockets like a pack of Newports or something, but maybe a vape pen, maybe eyeliner, maybe mascara, all that little, like something a bride would want to feel like a little comfort item,
Okay.
Everybody's like pockets. And then I talk to women, they're like, "Oh my God, dude, I wish I had pockets in mine." Not to put your hands or your phone in, but just something little,
Huh. Interesting.
So it's like I'm outside of the paradigm of what normal people do stuff. I'm like, I don't know, put pockets in it. And, it's almost like, everybody's like, gasping, known as blasphemy to put a pocket in a wedding gown. Well, mine got pockets.
And if people like it, yeah, I mean, and I think it's breaking the norms, and that's something that if we look at what you've done in your life, you've kind of taken that approach anyhow, whether you've meant to or not. I think you're a restless spirit, and you don't mind living that Bedouin lifestyle where you're not anchored in one spot, with a white picket fence and 2.5 kids and, that typical thing that everybody expects. And I can relate to that.
Yeah. Oh, if anybody can, you can.
Right.
Yeah. And, another thing, sewing, right? It's very feminine in nature, but every sailboat down here, there's a sewing machine on that boat, because when you're out there and you got to do repairs, you're going to use a sewing machine. And it's amazing how many men actually sew down here with the upholstery. There's a big, huge shop right behind my boat where it's parked, and they're in there. They do upholstery from about 7 in the morning to about midnight every single day, and they got sales pulled up. Like, and they're just. It's funny how in the Midwest, you know, grandma will sew your pants or mom will hem up your jeans or whatever. But here in the maritime world, sewing isn't so much something that's on the feminine side, you know.
Right. It's because it's more industrial, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
But it still takes
the,
that same talent.
yeah, and I'm actually surprised at how hard it is to do. Like, you know,
Absolutely.
it's, you know, just, and then it's like building something. There's a lot to it that you don't realize, you know, until you all of a sudden you got a roll of fabric in front of you, and it's like, all right, let's start making patterns. Like, there's a lot to it, just like anything else that you just don't realize until you do it.
Right. Yeah, you're just not grabbing a bolt of fabric and hanging it on a mannequin and just, you know,
and letting it rip. Yeah, that's not. Yeah, and I think it's not like that at all. Although it seems like it should be, but
well, it's like somebody building a chassis. You know, okay, I'm gonna, you know, I need. You just can't just bend pipe and then expect it to all come together right. You gotta plan it out because everything has to fit.
And you know what? It's crazy you say that, because I was telling somebody, I don't know, I think it might have been somebody that, you know, racist, and I was like, dresses are the hardest thing to make. Wedding gowns are like above that. And I was like, it's like going to welding school and learning how to weld, and now you're going to build an IRS rock crawler. You're still welding, you know, but I missed the Formula toy. I missed the national progression of that. You know, I went straight to Shannon Campbell, you know, I went from welding school to Shannon Campbell in my garage, and the alarm clock of life woke me up because it was a lot. It was a lot. Right. And I didn't do that natural progression of like, oh, let me build a pair of shorts, or let me make a pair of shorts or a shirt. No, let me go to wedding gowns, dog. You know, it's just, I'm going to push all in.
Like going to Ranger school at 39, huh?
Yeah, I was just happy to go. It's right. Just, and I'll say this too. Probably the hardest thing I ever did. I wanted to do one more hard thing. And I tell you, Rich, I got to stop watching Discovery Channel because I get myself in so much trouble. But when I want to do one more thing, and I applied for to be a test subject at the Navy Experimental Dive Unit. And that down there, my friend, running on those treadmills, doing 100% max runs, they were diving these tranks for like 6 hours. It was the day one I called my dad, and Dad was like, "Uh-oh, I know this call." And I was like, "Man, I don't know. I messed up." But, you know, I made it through. So I got my one last hard thing to do. But that experimental dive unit, best ranger, you know, all that stuff was just, it's just funny how you don't know what you can do until you do it. And
right.
I was definitely pushing to the limits.
So the only thing we haven't talked about that I know that you did or you were doing, I don't know if you're still doing it, is podcasting. You started a podcast on fishing?
I did it in Panama City Beach, and I was going to move it down here, and it's just so busy working. And these podcasts, you know, the interviews are fun, and you're talking to, you know, people you don't know, and hearing everybody's story, and it's awesome. And I was going to move it here, but the editing takes so much time, I just couldn't do it. And there's legends of fishing down here, you know, like in the offshore fishing world and sport fishing. There's guys down here, you know, who discovered the drops and put sport fishing down here on the map. And the one that I've always wanted to do and talk to, Jimmy, he died like 2 months ago, and I was like, son of a buck, man, I missed my chance. So my next podcast I got going on now, I'm starting it, it's called, you know, I told you earlier in the Army, it's, you know, Ranger School. Either you got a story or a tab, you know, because you wear the Ranger tab.
Right.
Ranger School stories are so ridiculous, and they're funny to hear. So my podcast is Ranger School, a story and a tab, meaning you went to Ranger School, you graduated. Let's hear your story, because you're so sleep deprived and hungry and everything else that your body just does crazy stuff. Like, you know, so my next podcast is, you know, just hearing everybody's Ranger School stories. And because they're funny. And the old school guys, they'll be a little bit different than the new school guys, but they're all going to have that common theme of like, you know, what their body was doing when they were standing there, putting acting like they're putting quarters into a Coke machine, and it's really a tree, and they're just standing there, standing next to a tree with their, you know, hitting the buttons, you know,
Right.
because you're droning, you know, you're actually sleepwalking. You know, dudes walk off cliffs, and like it's dangerous because you just go on autopilot and you just, you know, sleep.
So there's one other guy that I know. Used to spot for Hal Frost back in the rock crawling days, and Doug. I'm gonna screw up his last name, but it's like Keith.
Kai Sweater.
Kai Sweater,
I know
yes.
him. Doug K from Pirate.
So I asked him because he's still friends. You know, we're friends on Facebook and stuff, and he, you know, he did the whole special forces thing too. And I asked him, I said, so, you know, do you know Rob? And he goes, oh, damn, yeah. So I thought he has a pretty interesting story too. And I hope to get him on here at some point because I think it's, you know, it's an interesting story that, you know, he was a wild, crazy.
Yeah, and it's funny because he was around early days of all the rock crawling stuff.
Absolutely.
And then he got, I mean, he kind of got more career oriented and kind of had to put that stuff to the side, you know.
Right.
Yeah, but Doug K.
Yep.
Doug Kai Sweater. Can't remember.
Yeah,
he lives out there
that's a lot closer than I could get.
Yeah, he lives out there in Southern Pines, right outside Fayetteville.
Right. So cool. What else do you have going? You're the kind of guy that's going to have something crazy planned or is going to come into the mind. I guess it's that Discovery Channel stuff, but you know, anything else that you're going to?
So the only thing I got going on right now is I'm supposed to be we're going to take me and my buddy. We're going to go take the big boat down to Costa Rica, and the transmission went out, and nothing on this boat's small. Detroit 671s, these big transmissions, and only get the transmission out, I cut the floor underneath the couch and lift it straight up. And I've been putting it off, and it's to the point now where I'm just gonna fix it, you know, because it's been that down for like 3 or 4 months. I'm just gonna fix it. So I'm gonna charter this boat a little bit on the side, but you know, I got opportunities, you know, at Costa Rica coming up or Puerto Rico. There's fishing jobs there, and there's the fashion stuff, and San Juan and Puerto Rico is really, really nice compared to St. Thomas. I love St. Thomas, but Puerto Rico is, you know, it's actually like not third world. So I got that going on. I'm kind of like in limbo right now. I'm really kind of seeing what our season down here is going to do, because, you know, with my retirement stuff, I don't have to really work that much. But what I found out is being retired isn't that great, because guess where all your friends are? At work. So now you end up, you know, then you just sit around all day. It's like skipping school, man. It's fun for a minute, but then all your buddies are in school, you know. So being busy and having some kind of schedule, I gotta do that, because otherwise I'm just gonna waste away down here. But yeah, I've got a couple things going on with that. I was trying to get Kyle, my son, to come out here, and you know, Rich, and I was telling Wyatt Pimpern and those guys this, is like, never discount how much influence you can have in anybody's life at any given time doing any given thing. Because Kyle, my son, is the only person I know who from 10 years old, running on his KX or his little CRF 50 at KOH in 2009 and racing next to me, you know, at dirt rock. I got videos and you're waving the green flag. Kyle was so into that stuff from 10 years old. All he wanted to do is go to fab school, and that little shit went and did it. And now he's doing some big stuff. And it's just cool to see, you know, all the stuff that we were doing, and this kid hanging out with you and me and all these other dudes, how much it changed his life, you know?
Right.
And it's just, so he's doing good things. So I kind of backed off getting him out here. He cold calls these shops and gets these jobs. And, you know, oh, you raced the Baja 1000 on a dirt bike? You know, because you raced in Nora. And like, oh, you've been to King of the Hammers? You know, oh, you've been to SEMA? Oh, you know Dave Cole and Big Rich? Like, you know all these people that people in Pennsylvania think they only know, and then here comes this 21-year-old kid. Oh yeah, I've done all that stuff. Here's all my pictures. And so every time you walk into a shop, and then, oh, you went to the fab school? You know, like people, these fab shops on the East Coast know what the fab school is. And he's doing great things, and I'm super proud of that kid. You know, he's definitely, and you think talent. He has so much talent, and he has the one thing that you can't teach, like what we talked about earlier, Rich, is passion. He loves welding, he loves motorsports, he loves tube chassis and dirt bikes, he loves all that stuff, and he has the passion for it. But then what he has too is a natural talent, and then on top of that, he's got formal training. You know, and dude, I was like, bro, you're gonna be good forever.
Yep.
And if you're not, I'll buy you a welding truck, and you go to Midland, Texas, and do that for a couple of years and just pipeline weld. Because burn 70-18s up out there and make big money. But you know, he's good, and it's all because of guys like you, and it's guys like, you know, the whole crew that we hung out with for all these years. You know,
right?
You know, he grew up with this stuff, so it's just cool to see all that. Man, I got some great videos, man. You and he did an interview at the Tucson race. A guy walks up, the announcer. What's your name? It's Kyle. You know, in his little fire suit. And it was all because of the stuff that you guys were doing, and we were just tagging along, having a good time too. You know,
that's awesome.
Hey, it's what gets us is friendship. You know, the only reason I ever did any of this stuff really was to hang out with my friends, because my Army guys weren't doing it, so I had to go hang out with all the other dudes. You know, I was on my internet friends really. You know, and then
the make-believe internet friends.
Yeah. Well, then you find out, damn, you all guys do exist. You know, it's funny how all that stuff starts, and then, you know, to see a young kid give you influence so greatly, and it's pretty cool. So again, like I said, you know, for anybody, never discount how much influence you can have on any person's life, saying or doing any little thing at any given time, and it just changes their whole thing.
Yeah, I feel that's my legacy. That my legacy was bringing people together, and then hopefully awakening a passion in some to continue in the sport, you know, one way or another, or the industry. And that's kind of why I do the podcast as well, is to tell everybody's story, you know, with people that have passion and why they are who they are and where they're at. And hopefully that awakens in somebody else.
And let me tell you this, man. And my mom, who she passed in 2015, but she lived in Phoenix, so she'd always meet. She met us at the Tucson race. There was another one up north of Phoenix somewhere. We did this little track. But I think we showed up late or something, like right at the drivers' meeting, and we pull up. But the very first time my mom ever rode in any of my off-road cars was. And then, you know, she's at the finish line at Parker and the Blue Water, she was KOH. But the only time she ever rode in any of the race cars was at that race north of Phoenix, like in 2012 or something. And I took her in that little lap, and the picture I have of her is amazing. And it was at a dirt riot race, you know.
That's
of
awesome.
All the races she ever went to, she met us in Mexico for the Nora one time. And she met like every KOH that I did until she passed, she was there. You know, all those, but the only time was at a dirt riot race. You know, so I'll never forget that. The picture I have is amazing.
That's great.
But yeah, that was that, and we showed up late, and like the driver's meeting, I got out of the car, and I didn't even unload the car. We got out of the truck and just went right to the driver's meeting right in front of the podium. But yeah, I still got all my dirt riot trophies, man. We used to clean up in the little Rhino back in those days.
Yep, that's cool. Well, Rob, if there's anything else that comes up and hits like the fashion designer, we're going to have a second interview so that we can discuss those things. Because I love how I just love how you have a passion for each one of these things that you've done, and you just go for it. I've always been of the mind is you never fail unless you don't try.
Yeah, man, you gotta try. If you fail, you know what? It is what it is.
Yep. You know, if the only failure is never trying.
And you know, it amazes me. And the older I get, the more I see it. I mean, people just don't try. That nope, 1,000, nope, nope, I'm not gonna do it. Nope. They're just so scared of failure. Like, I fail all the time.
Yeah, I spent 23 years as a promoter, failing a lot,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
stuck with it.
Experience is what you get when you don't get what you want. Hey, before we get off here, man, I just want to send a shout out because I'm actually, bringing up Pistol Pete earlier. The last time I saw you when you came down to Panama City Beach, went fishing, was when Pete was in that accident and he got killed. And I think Pete Soren was kind of the rock donkeys and the desert racing. Like he was like our little mediator between the two. And I got a picture of him. I had a rock donkey across my samurai buggy at Parker, or maybe it was Vegas Arena. And I had a picture of him standing there because he's the one who named us that.
Right.
And it's just, I always thought the world of that dude. And the fact that talking to you, the last time I saw you is when we were all going out to eat that night when we all found out.
That's right.
So
I had
man,
forgot that's when we found out. Yep.
Yeah, we were going to eat that Cajun place, I think. So yeah, hey, he's one of the good ones, man.
Yes.
Yeah,
he was one of those guys that, you loved him or hate him. There was like no in between. And I think that once people got to know him better, especially on the rock, the guys on the KOH racing side, the rock racers or rock crawlers, they got to understand him better. Because at first he came on like, oh, you guys just want to be like me. And what he meant was, you guys want to race trophy trucks. You want to race at the highest level. And that's true. We just may not have wanted to do it like Pete did. But we all aspired to do what he was trying to do. And that was where the misunderstanding came. And I even told him that at the fire at KOH when he first said that. And 100 people looked at him like, you're an ass, and it was like, no. What he means is,
Yeah.
But yeah,
oh my
he was
God, what a character, man.
Yes,
what a
absolutely.
Character.
Well, Rob, thank you so much for spending the time today and talking with me and going over all the things that you've done in life. I know we could probably spend another 4 hours really diving deep into all of these stories and stuff, but you know what? We'll leave those stories for when we're back on a boat together.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And thanks, because I'm way out here and, I'm so far detached from that part of my, life, the off-road stuff, that it's good to still kind of be like, oh yeah, what's going on, big dog? We remember you. So it's definitely my pleasure having you. And Rich, I've known you for years, man. You're a dear friend. And I'm looking forward to seeing you. I hope you guys do come out. Everybody else comes out. Let's come on out.
Yep, we're going to do it.
We'll go fishing, go have some beers, and we'll talk about how cool we were at one point.
And we'll make sure Shelly doesn't bring bananas.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
We had to have somebody to blame for our boat ride that day.
Yeah. I hate that stuff.
Anyway, thank you, Rob, and take care, and good luck on any endeavor that you decide to pursue.
Well, I appreciate it, Rich, and same to you. And give Shelly a big hug for me, and man, hopefully I see you soon, brother.
Yep, hopefully. Take care.
All right, thanks, man. Bye.
Bye. Well, that's another episode of Conversations with Big Rich. I'd like to thank you all for listening. If you could do us a favor and leave us a review on any podcast service that you happen to be listening on, or send us an email or a text message or a Facebook message, and let me know any ideas that you have, or if there's anybody that you have that you think would be a great guest, please forward the contact information to me so that we can try to get them on. And always remember, live life to the fullest. Enjoying life is a must. Follow your dreams and live life with all the gusto you can. Thank you.